great friend Don Young and Mayor Sullivan and all of you officials of government and those of you who are seeking to be officials. But above all, I thank the women Republicans for organizing this program. As chair of the Republican group in 1962, and with the help of my great friend and neighbor Frank Reed, I sought to be elected to the Senate in 1962. As you know, I didn't quite make it. But those 48 years since that time has been very interesting, to say the least. As I told another group here in Anchorage, I'm a great admirer of Winston Churchill, and I'm ever mindful of his advice, which was, if you're going through hell, keep going. I'm grateful to you, all of you, and so many Alaskans for your prayers. To me, those prayers, particularly those of Pastor Jerry Prevost and his friend, his assistant, and his congregation, helped me to get through that ordeal that my family and I faced. But now that's through, and we're here to enjoy the night. I want to remind you this is the 101st anniversary year of Lincoln's birth. Alaskans should realize how greatly he affected our lives. As the founder of our Republican Party, Lincoln faced enormous problems, not the least of which was the selection of a person with vision to assure the expansion of our country to the west. He selected William Seward, who negotiated the acquisition of Alaska from the Russians in 1867. Through the years, Republicans have provided leadership for Alaska. Our delegate James Wickersham was the first one to suggest that Alaska should become a state. And a Republican Senator, Fred Seaton, made only one speech on the floor of the Senate. He declared that it was time for Alaska to become a state. He did not run for re-election. Instead, he became the leading editor and publisher to urge General Eisenhower to return to the United States to run for the presidency. At that time, he was commander-in-chief of our forces in Europe. You know, Eisenhower asked Seaton to join his inner circle, and in 1956 he was appointed Secretary of the Interior. I was honored to work for Secretary Seaton. His role there was very important for all of us. I could go on at length about what he did, but above all, Congress approved our statehood bill 2 years after he was appointed. We had waited years and years and years, but he put together the team that really worked with all Alaskans, and we had a great many. It was a bipartisan team, but I do believe that we achieved statehood in 1959 primarily because of his efforts. As a matter of fact, I stood next to Fred Seaton at Fort McHenry in Maryland. I don't know if you know that is the tradition that the first flag is raised at Fort McHenry when a new state enters the Union. And at 1 minute after 12, on January 3, 1959, our flag was raised. That was the official flag making us a state. By 1969, our Governor Wally Hickel was appointed Secretary of Interior. Since then, successive Republican governors and presidents have led our nation to recognize the importance of Alaska to our nation. Our future now is challenged by changing financial problems. The global economy has become so complex that, in my opinion, our future is very fragile. In my last year as chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, our spending level was $731 billion. President Obama's discretionary budget last week requested $1.4 billion. The administration wants to not only change our health care system, it proposes new programs and would continue the process of bailouts of elements of our financial system which really forgot the basic concept of the balance between supply and demand. I'm probably going to get a little too serious for you now, because I believe that this is no time for new programs. It's time to review all existing programs and to cut federal expenditures wherever possible. There's program after program being presented, and I'm sure you've read all about them, but in addition now, they want card check to strip the working people of our country of the right to privately vote on what union they want to join. All of these requires each of us to reinforce what we stand for as Republicans. As the father of 6 and grandfather of 11, I do worry about those coming generations, and I hope that you join me in that worry. You know, this is a tough time. Tax bills that they will inherit because of our nation's current debt are astronomical. Clearly, there's a need for reconsideration of all we've done in the past that led to this fantastic level of debt. Napoleon, I was reading a book just the other day, I came across this. Napoleon was reputed to have said, "Never were loans meant to be employed to meet current expenditures, whether they be civil or military. One has only to consider what loans can lead to in order to realize their damage." And I'd like to quote to you from an excerpt from a recent paper that was prepared by Carmen Reinhardt of the University of Maryland and Kenneth Rogoff of Harvard University. Neither one of them is known in our country as being extreme conservatives. This is one, I've got a series of quotes. I'll just take part of them because I don't want to prolong this. As a matter of fact, I've left by Judy Bittner, my sister-in-law, by the way, who's with me. I thank you for coming, Judy, but I left about 25 pages over there, so just in case you take this long and think what I could have done. Listen to this. When gross external debt, that means that the debt that we receive from foreign governments or foreign individuals, reaches 60% of our gross national product, annual growth declines by about 2% for the levels of external debt in excess of 90% of the GNP. Growth rates are roughly cut in half. The general rise in public indebtedness stands in stark contrast to the 2003-2006 period, where public deleveraging in many countries it's also owed to the direct bailout costs in some countries. The sharp run-up of public sector debt will likely prove one of the most enduring legacies of the 2007-2009 financial crisis in the United States and elsewhere. The federal government's debt, stoked for years by deficit spending, has surged because of this economic crisis. Debt now approaches the level of the World War II debt after years of war. Now, it goes on. Low interest rates have helped us to a certain extent finance this expense so far, but interest rates, when they start to rise, and they will start to rise, will mean that the government will face problems similar to those of home buyers who took out mortgages with teaser rates that jump after 1 or 2 years. Their point was this: we are reaching the debt tipping point, the point at which we owe more to foreign creditors than our gross national product. And that means that the 90% level is kind of a make or break point, they said, and for any country that wants to grow its way out of debt. If the government debt climbs above 90% as foreign debt of the gross national product, economic growth slows so much that growth is no longer a viable solution to reducing that debt. And they claim that after that, governments have to look to rely on solutions such as reducing wages and depreciating their currencies. Over time, that will